Hello and welcome to No Wrong Choices, the podcast that explores the career journeys of accomplished people. We showcase these stories to provide insights that are strategic, inspiring, and most of all entertaining. I'm Larry Samuels, soon to be joined by the other fellas, Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. If you've been enjoying our show or are new to the program, please support No Wrong Choices by following us wherever you're listening right now and by giving us a 5-star rating. We also encourage you to connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X, or to send us a note via NoWrongChoices.com. This episode features the social worker Christina Byrne. Christina is the executive director of St. Francis Friends of the Poor, a very important facility in New York City that provides housing services to people with histories of chronic mental illness. Christina is someone who's making a difference literally every day. Tushar, please set up this conversation for us.
Well, let's be honest, this is not an easy subject to talk about in a lot of ways, because, no one really wants to talk about the notion of homelessness in America. This is not something that we kind of look at a great deal in our lives, and so many of us are lucky to have a very a flourishing career, a happy home, family, etc. And it's those other folks in society who've said, you know what, no, these are topics that we have to concentrate on. These are people too. These are members of our society, members of our community, and they should not be forgotten, and they should not be ignored. I've always wondered about the mindset of someone saying that I'm going to move down this type of career path, because it's kind of a special person who does that. I'm really interested in finding out that journey of Christina from, where she started to where she is now, because it's, now she is a real advocate, a person of real importance within this sphere, and I'd love to hear that story.
I love the notion of mindset there, T. I think you just set the stage for us, We prepare for a lot of interviews, and in preparing for this one, in looking at her life and her career journey, all I realized is how selfish I am.
Yes, we all are. Oh my God,
we're telling you that all the time, Larry. What do you mean? Are we not saying it enough?
That's right. But no, I went through my own thoughts of I'm always thinking about my career and how I want to go forward and what I want to succeed at and do and accomplish. And it does make you think about somebody like Christina Byrne, who's thinking about others all the time, and just how special that is and how rewarding and fulfilling, yet challenging a career this can be. So yeah, fascinated to start this discussion.
Absolutely. It's all about how can I make a difference and how can I give back? A very uplifting mindset. As we get into this, one of the things I'm curious about is what it's like to run this type of community or facility or organization, whatever the right word is, in New York City. This is a big place with complicated politics, and I imagine that plays a very big role in her day-to-day. So I'm very curious to hear about that as well. So with all of that said, here is Christina Byrne. Christina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Of course.
Hello.
I should point out to you and to our audience that you sort of wound up on our radar screen thanks to one of our past guests, Cindy Hsu of CBS here in New York, did an incredible story on St. Francis that was just so remarkably uplifting. She brought it to my attention, watched it, and you so stood out within that. I just felt that we needed to get you on the show, and Tushar and Larry were excited about it too. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So Christina, as we lead into a lot of these conversations, we always like to give our guests the opportunity to tell us about them in their own words, rather than, whatever comes out of my mouth leading into the conversation. So, Christina, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do?
I guess the way that I would define myself is by saying that I'm a social worker. And I think that best describes me professionally, but it also describes kind of my innate being and who I am. So yeah, I would say I'm a social worker.
And was this always the dream? Let's start at the beginning. Let's take us back to a little girl. I know you had aspirations to be a lawyer at one point. Was that the dream? Obviously, this is a different calling. So how did this happen? Tell us about where it started.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask anyone who knew me growing up, what was I going to be? You know, that senior superlative at high school, you know, what are you going to be? I think everyone who knew me would have said social worker. That is not what I would have said.
Okay.
I would have said, I would have said a doctor or a lawyer. And for me, that had less to do with being a doctor or a lawyer and had more to do with how I defined success and respect. You know, I grew up with, you know, in a tough household, and I was intent on showing the world that I was better than what I was coming from. And for me, that meant, you know, a doctor or a lawyer. I went to college thinking that I was going to go in one of those directions. I liked biology, so I studied biology, and then there was this turning point in college where it all became very, very clear to me that that was not the right way to go.
So what school did you go to? What college did you go to?
Undergraduate school, I went to Rutgers University.
Nice. You went to look at Jersey, always making good people.
A Jersey girl.
There you go.
I'm a Jersey girl.
guy.
Makes it very
Down
exciting.
the shore.
Oh, look at you. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So what was that thing in college that said to you, okay, because your story is not that dissimilar from mine in a sense, right? So like I went to college as well to become a lawyer, and I ended up a broadcaster. Now, obviously, we have gone in different directions, but so what was that one thing in college where it kind of sparked with you and said, no, my calling is not being a doctor, it's not being a lawyer, it's going down the road of social work. What was that one thing that kind of ticked the box for you?
Yeah, so, you know, I put myself through college and worked as a waitress the whole time. And, you know, there was this moment in time where I was in a very fancy restaurant, dressed in a tuxedo, serving very fancy people, you know, the same people that I thought I wanted to become. And they were just jerks. They weren't nice. They weren't.
Oh, geez.
They weren't nice to me. They weren't nice to anyone else in the restaurant who was trying to make them have a wonderful evening. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with waitressing. And through a friend, I got a job working with a little boy, 9-year-old boy, who had cerebral palsy and other developmental disabilities. And my job was to meet him at home at the school bus, get him off the school bus, get him into his house, and make sure that he got a snack, that he was clean, and that he sat in front of the television until his mother got there and everything was just quiet and copacetic. His mother was an older single mom, and their house was not wheelchair accessible. This was a 9-year-old boy. He was pretty big for a 9-year-old, whose only method of getting around was either kind of dragging himself, crawling, or using a wheelchair. And his mother wasn't physically able to help him in and out of the house. I mean, you had to go down a couple steps of stairs. So the bus driver came and got him in the morning, and he went to school, and then I got him off the school bus, and that was his life. And that wasn't okay with me. And so I worked with him, his family, the organization that I worked for, the community, and helped them get a ramp and to get a collapsible wheelchair, like a portable wheelchair, and got him out of the house, you know, threw him in the car, threw the wheelchair in the trunk, went to the park, went around the neighborhood, you know, went to the mall, just exposed him to life. And that kind of exposed me to what my new life was going to be. I knew right away, right there and then, I changed my major, focused on psychology, and yeah, that was it. 9-year-old boy.
Wow. I'm curious as you tell that story. Did you maintain a relationship with him going forward? Do you know what became of him?
For many, many years, I did maintain a relationship with him and his family. Well, it has since been many years since I've been in touch with him, but he moved out of his mother's house. His mother was still alive. But, you know, he did what all of us want to do. He got out of his parents' house. He went to go live in a group home with other people who had disabilities similar to his, and was living his life with roommates and the supports that he needed to enjoy that.
Wow. And in a lot of ways, you made that possible, or you helped make that possible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So after that moment and the pivot that presents itself, what did you do? And I know you changed majors, et cetera, but what types of things did you get involved with to really immerse yourself in a world of giving back and taking care of others?
Yeah. So I would say for the better part of the first 20 years of my career, I kind of fell in love working with people who had developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities. And so I kind of worked my way through the progression. So I changed my major, graduated with a psychology degree. As I started in my career, you start where everyone starts, is kind of on the front line, working one-on-one. So I went from working with that individual in his home to working as a supported employment job coach. With what that meant is that young adults, typically with developmental disabilities, who were trying to enter the workforce but needed extra supports. So I was there to help that person learn their job and do well in it. And one of those jobs was working in a meat packing factory and a meat locker.
Wow.
So it was a freezing cold environment. I remember it was summertime, so it was beautiful and warm outside, and then you walked inside and you had to put on these winter coats and then these lab coats on top of it, and gloves and hats, and all, you're around food. So
I'm picturing a Rocky right now, just so you know.
Rocky,
I'm absolutely
that's right.
seeing Rocky in my head.
That's exactly it. And I had to help her, figure out how to do that job. Needless to say, it didn't last very long. And
You are the person who had this job.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, this is not what I signed up for. But more importantly, I went back to the people who get the jobs and was like, what were you thinking, right? Like, you weren't setting anyone up for success. And for them, their job was, I need to find places that are willing to hire people with developmental disabilities and that don't, that have entry-level requirements. So, but they weren't on the ground. They didn't understand how, what situation would work best. And I think it's that scenario that helped me realize that that I was going to do better serving people in any capacity from a systems perspective, as opposed to working direct care on the lines, because that just wasn't the right way to go about it.
I kind of want to maybe not jump ahead, but I want to ask you kind of maybe an odd question, because you said a moment ago about this notion of this. Well, how it is that you were kind of shocked by how the people you had worked with were treated in a lot of ways, and not just maybe treated on an individual basis, but in terms of the environments they worked in, the way they were treated in that sense. Yeah. So, how much of your job do you think, or how much of your current job, and then the job in general, is compassion versus outrage, or is there a good combination of the both?
I would say it's a healthy combination of both. You need to have both. So compassion, look, the people that we're working with can sometimes be really challenging to support. And you have to come from this place of compassion to understand that this is not their fault. They are not doing this on purpose. They have an illness that has taken over their life and the lives of their loved ones and everyone who supports them. And the way you get through your day and the way that you help people through their toughest times is with compassion. On the flip side, when you're an administrator like I am, you also have to have a healthy dose of questioning authority and saying, what is this system, it's supposed to be set up to provide supports and services to help keep people safe and help them live with dignity and as members of the community. But the way that the system is oftentimes set up just flies right in the face of that sentiment. And so you have to be there to challenge the establishment and challenge policy and funding, and try to blend those two worlds so that it makes sense, that you can actually accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Christina, getting back to the journey aspect, were you able to make a difference and tell them that they need to take better consideration of what jobs they're offering people and what they can do? Were you able to affect change there? And what happened next?
So I guess what I would say is, I don't know if I was able to affect change there, right? I was young, I was in my 20s, I was moving quickly through the career ladder. But I do think I was able to make a difference. And I think that the best way I can say that I know that is because of where I am now, right? You know what I mean? I very quickly worked my way up the career ladder into roles where I had the ability to influence change and now, make change.
How did you do that? How do you become a skilled person within your field, and how do you rise through the ranks and become a leader?
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it's education, right? I went back to school. I got my master's degree in social work. A lot of it is, trial and error experience, working in systems and for people and around and with people. And now I'm kind of talking colleagues, bosses, executive directors, and other organizations. And navigating through those systems to see like who are people that are doing good work and people that I want to align myself, and who's doing it the wrong way and the way I don't want to do it. And making a lot of mistakes is also, learning and getting to where I am also required a lot of, 3 steps forward, 1 step back throughout the career. And, much like this whole podcast, the premise of it is there really are no wrong choices. You're doing the best you can.
As you say that, was there a particular obstacle that you had to overcome along the way that you were thinking about as you mentioned that?
I guess I can think of 2. So, one of the obstacles was that I was promoted into a job. So I was working as a program director. And so that means I was, at a higher management level, but still very much in kind of middle management. And I worked for an organization that then merged with 4 other organizations. And a position opened up that I applied for and miraculously was hired for, that was charged with helping to integrate those 4 or 5 organizations into one. So you took 5 independent organizations and trying to get them to join as one and move forward as one. And one of the things that I think has since part of that job that has since defined the rest of my career was around change management and helping people to come together around a common cause, even though everyone was coming at it with different perspectives. And, these mergers were not, people were not happy about the mergers.
I can only
people
imagine,
were losing their independent identities.
Yeah.
And, that ended up kind of sparking my transition from doing program work directly with people, in those cases with disabilities, to now working with systems and organizations and overcoming those challenges.
Interesting.
What is the time frame we're talking about here? Like how how long are we talking from day one when you got into the industry to where, not where you are currently, but to where you said you became a program director, and then obviously someone who began to oversee 4 or 5 different entities?
Mm-hmm. Probably about 15 years.
So you put a lot of time in. You put a lot of
Yeah.
time in to get to move up the
Yeah.
ladder that way.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were kind of saying like, what does it take to get to that point?
Yeah.
Um, One of the things in that job that you didn't really know until you were leaving, right?
Right.
Is, there was one particular person in the organization, was kind of the executive director of one of the smaller of the 5. And he was as resistant as anyone could possibly be to this merger and accepting the idea that we're all going to come together as one organization. And in many kind of, I would say passive aggressive, but kind of aggressive ways. Like I'd send an email and he'd respond in Spanish. He was a primarily Spanish speaking. Like, so he would just respond in Spanish, and I'm like, I don't speak Spanish.
What is the intent of that?
You know what the intent of that was. You can't say that. I don't know. Can you say it on the podcast?
Yes, you can.
Really, what he was telling me was to go after myself, right?
Yep.
He was just like, no way. But we worked through it, and I don't even remember. I was probably in that position 3 or 4 years. And when I left, he gave me, and what's funny, I don't know if you can see it on here, but he gave me this little box that says courage. On it.
Courage. Nice.
Wow.
And that was so meaningful to have him. I mean, he gave me hell the whole time, like never stopped giving me hell over this. But he appreciated who I was, how I was going about doing that, that his best interests were in mind, even when we were in disagreement. And he just said, you had a lot of courage to take on and do this job, and like, thank you. And it was like one of those really affirming things that you don't know until you're on your way out the door.
Yeah, a breakthrough moment.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you, Christina. One, you said obviously you got your master's degree. Degree. Now, I mean, I guess to move on in any kind of job, it requires a higher education at some point. But I want to ask you, like, on a serious note, do you feel that you needed a master's degree, not just simply to move on, but obviously, I guess to move on in your career, but if you had to kind of do it over again, would you still feel it necessary to get a master's degree? Because obviously you had a wealth of experience, and that alone could have moved you up the ladder. And then 2, how much institutional resistance did you have to suffer through? Let's just say as a woman in the end in this career.
Right. I do think I needed a master's degree. And, one of the things that really helped me is having been, I was in the workforce for a number of years before I went back for my master's degree, because one, you needed it to move forward, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And there was that check the box, I need to have this degree to do this. But what I didn't realize, because, you're young and you're cocky and you think you know things, is that when I went to school and I was able to be around students that were coming right out of undergraduate school and getting their master's degree, and students like myself who were working full time, still in the workforce, and getting the master's degree. And when we came into our classes where we were talking about sort of the book theory on whatever it was, the difference in being able to internalize that information that you were learning was profound. The younger people that were going straight from undergrad into graduate school, and they may have had an internship or something like that they were using as their, field practice and their reference, but I feel like they really missed out on the opportunity to learn how to practically apply the skills that we were being taught. And I didn't realize that I needed those skills until I was in those types of situations and saw, this is how I could have handled this.
Sure.
So
I had an identical experience with my MBA. I got my MBA in my late 20s. I think I finished 2 days before I turned 30, and I kept asking myself the question, why did I spend all this money for the next 10 years? And then all of a sudden, I was running a big company, and all this stuff was in my head. I didn't know how it got there, but it was so incredibly helpful. And eventually, it comes back around, and it helps.
Yeah, no, it sure does. And I was also hopeful it would help, boost my salary working in social work. I will say, my salary increased by a whopping $11,000 a year, and it was
A whole $11,000.
$11,000.
Depending upon what you were making before, that may or may not have been significant.
And it was significant, but when you look back on it, you're like, wow. You definitely weren't going to school because you were hoping that you were going to make the big bucks.
Yeah.
But, Tushar, one of your other questions was, what challenges might I have had, coming into this workforce and climbing up as a woman. And, I think what I would say is I've worked in nonprofit my entire life.
Right.
Nonprofits there's a lot of women in nonprofits.
Okay.
And so I think I came up at a time where there was much more focus on giving women opportunities in leadership positions because nonprofits were primarily white men, middle-aged white men. But I was coming up in a time where there was much greater awareness of that. And so I think given lots of opportunities, I don't feel that I was ever at a disadvantage.
You never felt a resistance as you were moving up.
No, but interestingly enough, the position that I'm in now at St. Francis Friends of the Poor, I am the first woman, first non-priest to run this organization. And while I don't want to say that I faced resistance, because people were certainly very welcoming, it was a hard transition for a lot of people. I mean, it was things like, they have shared bathrooms on the floor, and they're like, do you need your own bathroom? Like, no.
Oh, geez.
Yes, as long as everyone's clean, like we can share the same bathroom. They had no idea how to accommodate a woman, or they didn't think they knew. I'm
Sure.
like, no, everything can stay the same.
That's so interesting.
I'm so glad you talked about salary. You brought it up, so now I'm going there. I want to talk about your motivation, really, is what I want to talk about, because success really today is defined by bank accounts, power, titles, freedom of, time that you have to devote to your profession or freedom for yourself. I mean, as a social worker and going up through the ranks of those, the corporate ladder, as it were, what was your motivation? I mean, obviously you got a tremendous amount of good feelings from helping people, and the motivation is there in that way. Was that primary? Did you think that at some point, hey, I'm going to be okay financially and I'm going to do very well financially? Or was that just never even a thought in your mind?
Yeah, it sounds almost like ridiculously altruistic, but while I thought that's what I wanted and needed. And look, we all need money, right?
Yeah,
but
sure.
really what was motivating me was the successes that I had along the way, where I could see where I was making a difference and helping other people. And that was self-motivating. You just wanted to do more of it. And I found myself, doing better and better at it. And I never wanted to be an executive director. I always liked the behind the scenes stuff, kind of setting other people up for success and letting someone else be that front person. I mean,
The guy behind the guy.
Yeah, yeah. And being the executive director is tough. It's kind of lonely at the top, and the buck stops with you. And if something goes wrong, like, guess what? You're the one that's on the hot seat. And I never thought that I wanted that. And 5 or 6 years ago, there came a point in my career where I needed to make a change. I was not happy. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my career, because I moved so far away from being connected with the people that I started to get lost. I didn't feel like I had a community anymore. And so I left that job and took a job in a very, very small rural community as an executive director. And, there was parts of my, of doing that was like, what the hell did I just do?
So you left New York and went to a rural community?
Left New York, went to northeastern Pennsylvania, and became the executive director of a very small organization, a nonprofit, serving people that were survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and other violent crimes. And really connected with my roots, with the roots in the community. And, on some levels, I felt like I was in retreat because I had gotten sort of overwhelmed by New York and felt lost in New York. And so I was like, all right, I got to retreat and kind of figure out who I am. And in doing that, it really helped me figure out what I was looking for in the next part of my career. And it was that I still wanted to be someone who was approaching it from an administrative point of view, but I wanted to be able to be closer to the change, and I didn't want to be in a small community for the rest of my life. So how to find that? And that's, like, everything sets you up for that next step. And prior to that, I don't think I ever would have taken jobs or even looked for jobs as executive director. But, that job helped me realize that I could do it. I enjoyed it. I just needed a different setting to do that in. And that led me to the job I'm at now at St. Francis. And I've never been happier in my work. I've never felt more motivated to come to work every day and continue to do good work. And, all of that's the product of all of the 3 steps forward, 1 step back over the course of 25 years.
What exactly attracts you to that position of being an executive director? Is it simply the matter that you said, I would much rather be the guy behind the guy, to the point where you just had that moment of clarity and said, you know what, it's actually better to be the guy, the one who makes that decision, right? So what are those 1 or 2 attributes or one of those 2 things that most attract you to such a position?
I think I developed the confidence in my skill sets to know that I could make good decisions and contribute meaningfully to the growth of an organization. And, that's, so it's a little bit of kind of confidence building that I realized that I could do that. So I guess I just kind of, I don't know how else to put that other than
there's no shame in saying it just kind of called to you. Okay. There's no shame in saying it kind of called to you.
I mean, I kind of got the confidence and really thought that I could make a difference, and really thought it for this particular organization. Really thought that my life, my professional experiences led me to this position and prepared me to do well in it.
So we have touched on St. Francis, but we haven't really dug into what they do. So can you please sort of lay out what St. Francis does, how they're making a difference, and really get into a little bit of detail around that for us?
Sure. So St. Francis Friends of the Poor is the organization that I work for as the executive director. We provide permanent supportive housing to single adults who have long histories of homelessness and live with severe mental illness. And so I think to bring that a little bit more definition, the people that we work with primarily have schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. That, if you're not familiar with that disease, it has degrees of illness. So there's plenty of people with schizophrenia that can live fairly normal lives. They take their medications, they know that they have this disease, and they've got the tools and the resources to help them manage that. And they could be living amongst us and we wouldn't know it. But like any kind of illness, there are degrees. And so the people that St. Francis Friends of the Poor have come to serve are those folks who are at the other extreme end of the disease, where it impacts their ability to live their lives independently. Schizophrenia is characterized by delusions, hallucinations, paranoia. A common attribute of schizophrenia for many of the people that we support is lack of insight into their illness.
Right.
And so by the time they find us, they have cycled in and out of the system of care. And that could be, living with family members who have finally reached their limits. Quite understandably, this is in no way disparaging family members who have to say, I can't take this anymore. To cycling in and out of people's couches, losing all of their friends, losing their job, ending up on the streets, in homeless shelters, in psychiatric hospitals, in jails. So a lot of the people that we support have cycled through that many times over. There, just like there's a continuum of the disease, there's a continuum of care in the field that provides these services. And so, some people can live, fairly independently in their own apartment with someone dropping in once a month, checking in, making sure everything's okay. Other people might, live with a couple of housemates in an apartment. Again, maybe someone drops in once a week, checks in, makes sure they're okay. The people who end up coming to live here at the St. Francis residences are folks that really do need daily assistance in order to help them to stay healthy and housed. So we've kind of fill a niche in the community of working with those folks that have not thrived in all of these other, continuum of care.
What incredible work and what an amazing thing that you're doing. As somebody who comes into an organization like that, who is the first woman and the first outsider in a way to step into a leadership role, how much change did you bring or did you need to bring into an environment that I don't want to say could have been stale, but might have had a myopic view and was probably ready for some change and new ideas?
Outside of the use of the bathroom, obviously.
Yeah, that was the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Had you come into this organization, it was founded by Franciscan friars over 40 years ago. They ran the organization until the day I started. It was run by Franciscan friars. They had established what is now, literally they are the very first permanent supportive housing provider, not just in New York City, not in New York, not just the country, but arguably the world. Like they started the movement of permanent supportive housing for people with severe mental illness and histories of chronic homelessness. And, it's by all measures, it is an organization that has been extraordinarily successful. And all of the other supportive housing providers all around the world are modeled after the work that they started 40 years ago.
Yeah.
That being said, change and growth is necessary for anything to continue to evolve and survive and adapt to the world. And when I was interviewing with the board, that was both my biggest challenge and biggest opportunity, was how do you preserve the values that that the organization was founded on, and all of the success that it has brought to so many people, helping them to stay healthy and housed, but at the same time bring in fresh new ideas, and also kind of align ourselves with where the current funding and policies and rules and regulations were.
Yep.
I mean, I say this with a whole lot of love, but my predecessors as priests kind of approached it like, yeah, what are you going to do to me? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And so when I came in and they were saying, oh, don't worry about that rule or regulation or whatever, I'm like, no, I don't wear the collar. I don't have special discipline.
I play by other rules.
I have to play by the rules. And they're, oh, I'll go to jail for you. No, you're not going to do that. So, so it's been a, like I said, it's my greatest challenge, my greatest opportunity. But I'll tell you what, and this is going to sound just awful, but it is the truth. I started in January 2020. Less than 2 months later,
COVID.
the world
COVID hits. Yeah, COVID
changed.
hits.
COVID hit, the world changed. So in those 2 months where I had promised my predecessors that I would not make any drastic changes for at least 6 months, right? They're like, you just need to, don't think you're coming in there and you know it all, sit back, learn, observe, give yourself a chance, all those sorts of things. Promised, fine. Listen, 2 months later, the world changed.
Did I say months? I meant weeks.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? We all needed to change together. Everything about what we did needed to be looked at, re-looked at, and adjusted almost on a daily basis. I mean, things were moving so fast, and trying to figure out how to help keep 255 people healthy. And that's just the tenants. We had 60 other staff that we were also trying to keep healthy. And quite honestly, that people who thought that the organization couldn't change, and that the tenants couldn't handle change, and that the systems that we worked in could not be changed.
Wow.
Guess what? We all had to do it. No one had a choice. And so that really helped me become integrated into the organization. Because first of all, I was here every single day with all of my staff in it, doing what needed to get done. So I was learning how to do the job from the ground up. And so that helped to establish trust. It helped people realize that we could change. And so as we found our new normals, and as I have been able to help integrate new opportunities for the organization, people are a little more open to it because they saw what we could do. They saw the resilience, and that we could not only survive, but thrive. One of the things that we're super proud of, and this is totally because, the relationship that our staff have with the tenants, but in COVID, people who were homeless, mentally ill were amongst the highest impacted by the death rate, by outbreaks within facilities like ours, and deaths. And we had no COVID deaths.
Wow,
we also
that's impressive.
had,
My God.
yeah, we had 95% vaccination rate. So people who are by nature distrustful of the medical system because of the interactions they've had with it over the years, and paranoid about like what is in that
Sure.
what's in that vaccination, and watch television and see powerful people talking about like paranoid about what's in that vaccination. And we were able to help people get 95% vaccinated, and we had no COVID deaths.
That's
And
remarkable.
That's
that
remarkable.
was the true testament to the value of how this organization does its work, and how they develop trusting relationships with the tenants. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Amazing. Talk about your roles and responsibilities. Like, exactly what do they ask you to fundraise? Is that handled by somebody else? Are you more in line with just care of the day-to-day clients, making sure that they have what they need, doctors, psychologists, what have you? Talk about those roles and responsibilities, because someone like me, I have no idea what you would be responsible for. It could be anything. They could ask you to get through red tape and do some political stuff for all I know. So talk a little bit about exactly what it is that you focus on in this role.
So what I focus on is a couple different fronts, right? So my job is to help ensure that the staff who are working directly with the tenants, and so that could be case managers, social workers, psychiatrists, medical doctors.
And you said it was about 60 people?
About 60 staff. And what I mentioned all of sort of the kind of professional level folks, but we run 3 buildings, right? So we have 3 buildings that we own and operate. They're all over 100 years old. Each building has anywhere between 80 and 90 tenants who live in them. And they're hard on the buildings. So we also have a very full building staff, building maintenance, porters, janitors. And, every single person in this organization plays a critical role in helping to make sure that our, end goal is met in terms of helping people stay healthy and safe. And my job is to make sure that they have the resources they need to do their jobs well. So that could be, fundraising is a huge part of that, right? More so for me than it was my predecessors, because my predecessors, they had 40 years worth of turning to their parishioners, their faithful parishioners, and who had
the collar.
who had the collar. And I'm like, I don't have the collar, so I need to find out different ways for this organization to raise money, because it's just a different world, right? I don't have access to the same people. So fundraising is a big part of it. Even though this was is and has been an incredibly successful organization, it was very much a mom and pop organization. And so, when I came in, the budget was maybe $4.5 million. It's now almost $8 million. And so, helping to get additional contract dollars from the city and the state, helping to raise money through private fundraising and through foundations, and then building the infrastructure to support all of that, right? And I think that's been a big part of this work as well, is bringing in infrastructure, having a human resources person, having a finance person, having someone who oversees the construction of the buildings. We just got a $22 million loan from the city to renovate all 3 of these buildings.
Wow.
I was going to comment on that, but thank you.
The better part of maybe 32 months just trying to get that loan to come through, right? The red tape has been insane. And another part of what I'm trying to do is not just make sure that what we're doing now is great and wonderful, but also trying to figure out, how do we increase the impact of our work? How do we serve more people? The organization has had these 3 buildings for 40 years, but would like to expand and do more work. So learning about New York City nonprofit affordable housing development
It sounds exciting.
It's fascinating and not for the faint of heart. I
Right.
mean, it is cutthroat, and I'm lucky that I've been able to connect and surround myself with consultants who can help me to do those things. But yeah, I spend a lot of time just keeping a lot of plates in the air. And in many ways, I see myself as kind of a web. I'm a conduit for helping to connect people with other people to help make sure that they're getting whatever needs they are met. So yeah, I'm kind of approaching this job from multiple fronts. And for me, it's really important to stay connected with the work. So I make sure that a couple times a week for each of the residences, I get out to the residences. I try to get out to them at least once a week, if not every other week, to touch base and make sure, I'm visible and I can see what's going on, and then, tap into my more, my personal social work skills by sitting in on meetings.
Sure, gonna tap into your roots again. Yeah.
Helping people to think about things in a little bit of a different way, and hopefully helping to make a difference at that level.
I find it a bit ironic that you say that you're obviously you're in a profession where there's a great deal of the notion of altruism and giving, and yet you say that the notion that you say that trying to go out and finding housing for in such a field, it's cutthroat. I just find that very very odd and ironic to say.
I so I guess how do you say these sorts of things? So we were looking for a building, and trying to find a building where you can, it needs to be 60,000 square feet, and it needs to be able to have these offices, and each room needs to have a bathroom, and all of these different things. And there's zoning rules. Is it zoned for residential? Is it not?
Sure.
And we're trying to find this in Midtown because that's where we've always historically worked, and we have a good thing with the community. And we found something, and we had to keep our mouths shut. We couldn't talk to anyone because we didn't want anyone else to know that this building was up for sale or going
Loose
to be
lips
up
sink
for
ships.
sale, right? Because
York
we're like,
City
this
real
is
estate.
ours. This is ours. We don't want anyone to have it. And do you know, no joke, 3 years, 3 years of working on this project, and a huge for-profit developer swooped in. And
Oh my God, I'm
God.
sorry.
So there was a reason why we were kind of coveting it and not being,
Right.
not talking about it. And in the end, still, you have someone that can pay, multiple tens of millions of dollars cash for a building. And then you have us that's saying, we need 5 years to raise the money for the financing.
Right, you're trying to rub pennies together, right? Exactly.
Yeah, can't do it. So we're back to the drawing board on that one.
Oh man, sorry.
One of the things I'm curious about in a role like yours is politics. And you talked about consultants earlier, and you've worked in different environments. You were in a small town, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all of a sudden you're back in New York, and you have a really big institution that you're running. And I have to believe that politics is a very big part of that. Is that correct, first of all?
Yeah. Yes. I would say, politics with a small p, not a capital.
Okay. And then my follow-up question was going to be, how do you learn to speak that language? If you're in a room with people of influence in that way, is there a language, is there a culture that you kind of have to pick up on early on to navigate those waters?
Yeah. In any of those conversations, you have to realize that your goal is to make that politician look better, right? So that anything that you do, you're trying to do it for your own work, right? But it has to make them look better. And if it doesn't, they're not interested, right? So you really do need to be able to kind of give them sound bites. And really, that's mostly all you need, right? But you have to figure out what's motivating them, what platform and policies are they advocating for, and how can you say this is the soundbite of information that you can use that will support your work by saying that you're doing X, Y, or Z for this population or for this organization. So, I work with consultants who help me figure that out, because I could not possibly know what all of the city council members, because it's not just the council members that your district that you're in. It's all of the city council members, who's sitting on what committee and who's chairing this and who's putting, their name on whatever legislation it is. So I do rely on advocacy groups that we're members of, and even private consultants to help us kind of figure that out, so that we can navigate a very complex world. I have to say, though, having done this both in a very small rural community and New York City, I'd take New York City over the rural community.
No way. Why
any day of the week. Small town politics is brutal, and mostly because it is personal. Everyone knows everyone,
right,
inside and out, their families, backgrounds, everything is so personal, and it can really, I would say feelings, and if you wrong someone,
they don't forget.
You're done. You are done. New York City politics, it's a little more forgiving. People are a little more thick-skinned here, and you're not kind of walking on eggshells quite as much as I found myself doing when I was out in a small rural community.
Wow. So what's the future for not only St. Francis, not only for St. Francis, your organization, St. Francis, but for you? Professionally, personally at this point. So what's the future look like?
Yeah. I have never been happier in a job than I am with this one. And it's because of the culture that was created and fostered in this organization, the people that we support, the work that we do, the impact that we're having. Everything right now is exactly everything that I've worked for has brought me to this one place, and I could not be happier. So I hope that my future is here for many more years to come. And one of the things that makes that, I think, doable for me is there's so many more opportunities for us to learn. Like I said, I just spent the last 3 years trying to learn how you do affordable housing development in New York City. And we haven't even scratched the surface yet. So the idea that I'm going to be able, to help this organization grow and sustain itself, not just for the short term, but the long term, and make bigger impact. We were the founding organization of this concept 40 years ago, and I want us to be, the part of the movement that continues this work in the new world that we live in, different than 40 years ago. So I hope that I'm here, and I hope that I can say that I've done that by the time I do leave.
I think you're pretty much going to say that, to be quite honest, after hearing after this discussion. Do you still see yourself in some ways as a social worker, or now do you see yourself more as an advocate? Or is there a difference between the two?
There's no difference between the two, I don't think. I absolutely still call myself a social worker. If I'm introducing myself to anyone, I introduce them as a social worker. Sometimes I'll say I'm a social work administrator. Mm-hmm. But I still 100% define myself as a social worker. And social work is advocacy, right? It's doing, that's the difference between social work and, let's say, psychology or therapy. We're not dissecting what the problem is. we're saying, all right, you've got a problem. This is where you're at right now. Where do you want to go? How are we going to help you to get there? It's very sort of practical. Yeah, it's practical. So I think that fits this role really well because I am an advocate and we, that's how we're going to be able to move this organization from where we are now to that next piece. Sometimes it's an advocate, with a big A and it's at the political level, and sometimes it's within the organization and helping people, understand this is where we, where we're at and where we want to go and how do we all get on the same page to get there.
Sure.
Right.
So we talked about a lot of the challenges that you're facing. There's so many of them. Talk about a great day. What does a great day look like? Obviously, a big donation or something like that, but it's all about the clients.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say,
what does a great day look like?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I would never define a great day as a big donation. I mean, that's wonderful. Look, trust me, I do little dances when we get donations.
It will be asking you for the web address soon for people can donate.
But a great day is when we're able to help someone make a meaningful change in their life. So, for instance, we just this past week we're working with someone who is struggling with substance use disorder. Has for a very long time denied it, like flat out denied it. We're like, come on, dude, we all know, like, what are you trying to do here? And, for the better part of a year, we've had, this person meeting with counselors and peer advocates and just trying to get him to come along. And on Thursday, he, voluntarily entered treatment, substance use,
Wow, there you go.
treatment. And so that was a great success. And whether it sticks or works, I don't know. But in that moment, that was a big thing for him. And hopefully it will help him to make some of the changes he needs to live a healthier lifestyle. So, I mean, that's a great day. That's a great day.
Yeah.
And deep down,
Sure
it sounds like the reason why you got into all of this in the first place. And so with that in mind, if a young person is listening to this show and they're thinking about trying to follow in, maybe not necessarily your footsteps, but similar footsteps, what advice would you give them?
So, I think surround yourself with amazing people, right? I mean, like, networking is key. Making sure that you give yourself opportunities to meet other people is a big piece of it. Being willing to be open to doors that you weren't initially thinking you wanted to do, right? Like, I mean, that wasn't what I want. That wasn't what I was aiming for. I was aiming for, lawyer, doctor, and, anything like that. It certainly wasn't social worker. But I was willing to kind of go with the flow and realize that you didn't have to stick with that course of action. You could pivot. What other things would I say? I would say I did think about this.
We ask everybody the same question.
Yeah, well, I know. Yeah, I kind of said this earlier. If someone is trying to figure out when they're going to school versus the workforce, I would always encourage someone to go into the workforce before going on to graduate school. Get some experience underneath your belt. Your money will be much better spent, and you will have a much better learning experience when you can practically apply what you've learned in the workforce to what education that you're having. I think that's a really big one when I talk to young people. Like, go get a job. Don't just go from undergrad to graduate school. And then the best advice that I had ever received, just sort of as I worked my way through the career, that I would say to folks is always hire up. always hire someone that's better than you. Don't be afraid to hire people that are more experienced or have a better skill set, or whatever it is. Surround yourself with the best people you possibly can. You will learn from them. You will become lifted up. They will learn from you. I think a lot of people are nervous about doing that, right? And that was a great piece of advice. And I make sure anytime I make a hire now, like, is this person better than me? And if they are, then I want them here.
Do you find, and this actually probably is, I mean, it's, obviously this is very much within the topic we're talking about, and maybe this is more of a general question, but have you seen since COVID the problem of homelessness increase, and are we doing enough to address it as a society, whether in the political field? And then this is a bit of a generic, obviously this is a tough question to answer.
Yeah.
But and I mean, you're obviously on the front lines. You are in a position of someone who can actually do something, quote unquote, do something about it. What do you see the problem, how big is the problem now?
I think sadly, the problem that my predecessors tried to solve 40 plus years ago when they started this organization, which is, helping people with severe mental illness to live with dignity, and to stay healthy and housed. I think that problem is as bad, if not worse than it was 40 years ago when people were being deinstitutionalized out onto the streets. I mean, that's, yes, there's statistics out there. I think if you look at what the homeless rate in New York City is, it's the highest it's ever been in the last 10 years. And, you hear all of the stories about, the person on the subway who pushes someone off. And those are all terrible and horrible things. So I think anecdotally and statistically, I don't think you can get away with saying anything other than there is still a very severe homeless crisis, and particularly for people who live with mental illness.
Yeah.
Look, what the number one way to solve homelessness is housing, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of other complicating factors, but housing is the most important one, and affordable housing is part of it. And then for people with mental illness, it's supportive, affordable housing. Right. And like I said, I spent 3 years trying to, secure one building that would have then taken another 5 years to renovate before we could have opened it. And that's all because of how the funding sources work. So, we need to get better at creating more opportunities and taking down some of these zoning restrictions. NIMBYism, not in my backyard stuff is part of it as well. And just investing in our future by putting this money up front, because you will save it, right? So for someone who's living on the streets or in an institutional facility, whether it's jail or hospitals, it's well over $175,000 a year to provide services to that one person.
Wow.
It's about $30,000 a year for someone to get those services here with us, where they're actually in the community, living as a contributing member, living with dignity, staying healthy, staying housed. It just makes sense. Like, let's just invest in this money, invest in these services now, so that we can get people off the streets faster. But it takes years and years and years to develop affordable housing, and there needs to be something to address that.
Well, if somebody is listening now and they want to invest and they want to help, how do they get involved?
Sure. So if people want to get involved and support our work, I recommend they go to our website, which is stfrancisfriends.org. And through that website, they can learn more about what we do and how to donate and other ways that people can get involved and support us.
Well, Christina, this has been a remarkable conversation. The work that you all are doing is incredible and so important as a New Yorker, as we all are. Tushar lives in New Jersey, but he comes into New York every day. As New Yorkers, we are greatly appreciative for what you're doing for our community. So, thank you for all of that, and thank you for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was Christina Byrne with a truly remarkable story of making a difference and working really hard along the way to make a difference. Larry Shea, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't imagine what would happen to her clients if someone like her in this organization wasn't there. We need more of it, right? I mean, why aren't there more places like this? Funding, obviously, but it's also people.
Yeah.
Like Christina Byrne, you need special people like this to make this kind of thing happen in a day-to-day scenario. So I'm really I'm floored by her sense of giving, by her sense of community and how much she cares about helping. Again, I'm selfish, I guess, because I need to do more of this. I need to volunteer more of my time. I need to do something because her story is completely inspiring. And I'm just really thankful that she shared it with us here today, because we all could give a little bit more and the world would be a lot better place. So thank you, Christina Byrne.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I mean, you think about folks who are kind of meant to do what they're supposed to do. Like, she said she wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, but really this was the profession that called out to her, and it has become a calling to her, right? So I mean, we sometimes on this show ask a question about, hey, how much money do you make a year? And you said it before. You said it yourself, Larry Shea, that sometimes success is defined by how much money you make. This is probably not the case here, right? She probably does not make a ton of money a year, but the actual return, the reward she gets back from the people that she helps, the communities that she helps to lift up, that's something you can't put a number on a lot of times, right? That's something
that's
you
the
cannot
payment,
put
the impact.
Right, that's a number you cannot put a number on. And the importance of it too is what's so striking, that you're right. She's out there doing something that many of us in our, when we sit back and watch TV say, I could go out and help more. No. She's doing it on the front line, doing it in a very tangible fashion. I wish the world was full of a billion Christina Byrnes, because the world would be a better place. I know I'm probably not going to go out there and help tomorrow. Maybe at some point I will. I'm like you. I'm a little bit selfish myself. But at the end of the day, what she's doing to help people is remarkable. And the other thing I'm so fascinated with is that now, obviously, she's been doing this profession for a long time. She's in a position of real power and change. But it's that notion of having to walk that tightrope, that fine line between the world of politics and the world of practicality as well. I mean, that is an art that you learn over time. And sometimes you never learn it. But when you do, you can make real change by doing so.
Absolutely. And that's where I was going to head to, Shara. It's you think about people who are giving back in different ways and donating their time and donating money and things of that nature. But Christina has built a skill set and a career and a profession around learning how to navigate all of those things, how to be an administrator within those worlds. And there's a lot more that comes with that than just being able to help the person down the hallway. There's a lot of hard stuff that goes into that as well. But being able to walk down the hall and see the difference that you're making, and to, we did this on Zoom. I'll give that up to everybody. So as we were having that conversation, we had the benefit of seeing the room behind Christina with all of this artwork that the people within the St. Francis Friends for the Poor home had created. And it was remarkable, and she was surrounded by it. So every moment of every day, she's reminded by why she's doing this, and what a wonderful
remarkable
feeling. So with that, Christina Byrne, thank you so much for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this or another journey story inspired you to think of a friend who could be a great guest, please let us know by sending us a note via the contact page of NoWrongChoices.com. As I mentioned off the top, please support us by following No Wrong Choices on your favorite podcasting platform while giving us a 5-star rating. And then last but not least, we encourage you to join the No Wrong Choices community by connecting with us us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. Thank you again for joining us, and always remember, there are no wrong choices on the road to success. We learn from every experience.